Andalucia, a cycling journey that took me through wild mountains, whispering forests, sun-baked desert, along the glistening Mediterranean coast, through endless olive groves stretching to the horizon, incredible landscapes that felt out of paintings, and magnificent towns carved from history. Leaving Portugal, I boarded a ferry across the Guadiana River and began the journey through Spain from the town of Ayamonte. Immediately, I found myself on the Via Verde del Litoral, one of Spain's remarkable greenway rail trail routes, watching wildlife and wonder amongst the coastal marshes. For a brief stretch, I lost myself in the quiet joys of nature and peaceful pedaling, but the trail quickly became an impassable path of mud and puddles, and I returned back to the highway. To my delight, the road riding in Spain was the best I found anywhere in the world. By law, motorists must slow 20 kilometers an hour below the speed limit and give 1.5 meters of space to pass. This law is strictly enforced, and as such, sharing the road here was an easy and pleasant experience. I spent the night in the town of Hippie, waking to quiet streets and fresh air, then rode out through quiet town roads and peaceful rural paths. Passing through the town of Niebla, I cycled below the walls of its medieval castle and crossed the Rio Tinto, its waters stained blood red from centuries of mining upstream. By afternoon, the road unrolled into long stretches of quiet highway. And finally, the city of Seville lay before me from a viewpoint on a hilltop. To my surprise and delight, I stumbled right into the middle of a parade of the show of the giraffes, an animal operetta. I watched this surreal experience for a while, then booked into a hostel for the night. Only spending one night, I took an early morning bike exploration of the city, passing the Seville Cathedral, an iconic Plaza de España, before turning to ride south. The bike paths through the city were lined with Seville orange trees, branches heavy with fruit, and I rode quiet roads out of the suburbs as the fog began to clear. The afternoon was all spent on the Autovia 375, riding through endless rolling hills of farmland and pasture, until I reached the town of Puerto Serrano at dusk. Here began another incredible greenway, the Via Verde de la Sierra. I rode for a while into the night before finding a peaceful camping spot by the trail. Away from the sounds of the city, roads, and ocean, I slept serenely to a sound that I hadn't heard in a long while: total silence. Although this rail line was never completed and operational, this route has now found its true life as an incredible multi-use pathway. Over viaducts and through tunnels, I rode in peaceful bliss into the hills. At the heart of the route, I discovered the incredible Peñón de Zafromegon, a jagged peak which is home to the largest colony of griffon vultures in Andalucia. And I watched in wonder as they soared high in the thermals above. As I slowly rode out of the hills, the landscape continued to impress, with peaceful green hills and olive groves stretching out to the horizon. The brief but beautiful 36-kilometer ride on the Via Verde came to an end in the town of Olvera, one of Andalucia's Pueblos Blancos, the White Towns. Built largely on a hill, with its skyline dominated by the parish of Our Lady of the Incarnation and the 13th century Olvera Castle. Through hills and canyons, I continued following the White Town's route, arriving quickly at Setenil de las Bodegas, which in contrast to Olvera is largely built inside a river gorge, with some houses even built under the natural overhangs of the gorge itself. Into the fading light, I rode on to finally arrive in Ronda at dusk. It was December 30th, and I decided to spend an extra day here to ring in the new year. The city is built on a towering cliff overlooking the Andalusian countryside. And at a viewpoint looking back to the city and the iconic Puente Nuevo bridge linking two parts of the town, I watched the final sunlight of 2022 fade from these rocks. In Spain, New Year's Eve is largely a family event, and the streets which had been packed mere hours earlier grew quiet as the new year rang in. As the clock struck midnight, I joined in Spanish tradition and ate my 12 grapes for good luck in the coming year. Then after some small fireworks, rested myself, eager for the new year ahead. Riding out of the city on deserted roads in the morning, I began a stunning climb into the Sierra de las Nieves mountains. Oh, what a wonderful feeling it was to be riding on mountain roads again, and my excitement drove me eagerly up to the first pass of the day, the Puerto del Viento. A long, thrilling descent through twisting roads brought me down the mountains, through evergreen forests, out to sweeping views of the valley, and through the small town of El Burgo. Then just as quickly, I was back into the hills again. This day was one of the true highlights of my time in Andalucia. Silent roads, smooth tarmac, and landscapes unrolling in slow, spectacular theater. All around me, I found epic rock formations. Massive cliffs and spires towered above the hills, with the beauty of nature expanding out in every direction. Oh my God! To cap off this incredible day, I found myself riding down through a canyon at dusk, under overhanging rock walls, to the town of El Chorro. I set up camp for the night in a free parking area by the local reservoir. Around me was a small city of camper vans, with some people having stayed to celebrate the new year, and many others readying themselves for the famous local tourist attraction. The Caminito del Rey here is an iconic Via Ferrata hiking route that traverses steep cliffside into a sheer gorge. Because of its insane popularity and nowhere safe to leave the bike, I didn't venture onto it, and instead began the day with another climb out of town. Overcast skies brought cool and clean air. It was an idyllic ride, on quiet roads winding gently through the hills, every turn unveiling the beauty of more stone and scrub. By mid-afternoon, I reached the city of Antequera, the affectionate heart of Andalucia, with the skyline crowned by the towering Alcazaba of Antequera, a 14th century Moorish fortress. As I rode out of the hills, I entered a world of endless olive groves once again, and they led me into the town of Rio Frio to spend the night. Every place in Andalucia seemed framed by its own spectacular setting. The city of Loja was no exception. A skyline of church towers and the Alcazaba de Loja, a 9th century fortress standing like a sentinel over the heart of the city. Onwards into the Granada basin, my route led through rolling hills blanketed in expansive olive groves. This region is part of Spain's Sea of Olives. In this area, over 180 million olive trees dot the landscape as far as the eye can see. For good reason, this is the world's largest olive oil producing region, and the roads that traverse the plantations are also fantastic for gravel riding. Aqueduct! Look at that, cool! By late afternoon, the soaring snow-capped peaks of the Sierra Nevada mountains appeared on the horizon, including the highest point of continental Spain, Mulhacén, at 3,479 meters. Entering Granada, I cycled up to the Mirador de San Nicolás, looking out over the UNESCO World Heritage Site Alhambra Palace. an Islamic fortress built in the 13th and 14th centuries, and watched the light fade from the sky. I stopped for only one night in the city to rest in a hostel. Then it was back out towards the mountains. The GR 3201 road here was a stunning cycling route, winding its way up through the hills and to the pass of Puerto de los Blancares at nearly 1,300 meters high. The weather was perfect, with the air crisp and fresh, and on deserted road, I began my descent back down. I rode through serene forests and wound my way into the steep walls of an incredible canyon. The landscape was truly a marvel to ride through, and as I got to the bottom of the descent, opened up into a dry valley with colorful eroded rock formations towering above. The Hoya of Guadix, which I was now passing through, is a badland formed from the persistent erosive powers of the local rivers over the course of millions of years, leaving a surreal environment of sculpted rock. As day turned into peaceful evening, I pushed on riding through the plain to the town of La Calahorra. After a meal of tapas at a local restaurant, I rode up to a spectacular camp spot at an overlook above the town. Rolling fog curled behind the Castillo de la Calahorra, an Italian Renaissance castle constructed in the early 16th century, perched majestically on top of a hill in the town, and I drifted off to sleep as stars twinkled above. Watching the sunrise over the castle and town, with the plain stretching into the distant beyond, was truly spectacular. It felt as if time had slowed down to let me linger there. A morning seared into my memory as the golden sunlight slowly kissed the walls of the castle and town. With the sun now beating down intensely above, it was off again through the plain. The morning ride brought me along service roads and quiet, forgotten highways paralleling the rush of the new super auto route. As I turned south towards the coast, I entered the Tabernas Desert. Often considered the only true desert in Europe, its wild landscape has been transformed through millions of years of erosion of what used to be an ancient seabed. Because of its unique geography, the Tabernas Desert has also been the filming location of many spaghetti westerns, its barren beauty a perfect stand-in for the nostalgic feeling of the American West. As the sun faded from view, I continued downhill towards the city of Almeria. This day was January 5th, Epiphany Eve, and a huge celebration in Spain. I rode into the city as the Cavalcade of Magi, or Three Kings Parade, was just wrapping up. After dodging the crowds and a quick dinner, I rode out to the coast. I had finally made it to the shores of the Mediterranean, and in the quiet evening air, a triumphant serenity washed over me. Sunrise illuminated the beautiful waters of the Mediterranean, but also cast light on seemingly endless trash on the beach, much of it from the nearby Poniente Almeriense, known as the Sea of Plastic, a sprawling expanse of greenhouses, one of the most important fruit and vegetable producing regions of Spain, but also a significant source of plastic pollution into the sea. The day was warm and beautiful as I set off on gravel path into the Cabo de Gata Natural Park. The ancient volcanic rock peaks of the Sierra del Cabo de Gata rose in the distance, and I soon found myself climbing scenic roads into the hills. It was a delight to constantly have my gaze drawn to the clear waters of the marine park on the coast. As I wound up these peaceful roads, the air scented by salt and scrub. Rounding the cape on the saddle, I began the descent on the Vela Blanca gravel path. This was such a magical place to ride, with the azure waters of the Mediterranean stretching out to the horizon and the hilly landscapes of desert scrub brush expanding out in the distance to my left. The afternoon unfolded like a farewell gift from Andalucia, as I made my way onto smooth pavement, following twisting roads jumping between bays along the coast.
Every day is another day in paradise.
As the afternoon light turned golden, I took a shortcut along a light gravel path over some small hills, with incredible views over scrubland and the sparkling sea in the distance. I chased my shadow back down towards the coast through some small towns, and in the distance in front of me, the full moon began to rise in the shadow of the earth. Dusk brought me into the town of Carboneras, with its serene beaches in full splendor under the light of the full moon. After dinner, I rode out of town to my final camping spot in Andalucia, and this was by far the most magical. A local had built a small temple out of beach stones. Under the beautiful light of the full moon, the sea breathing softly close by, I soaked in the serenity and reflected on my time in Andalucia. The mountains, forests, deserts, towns, and peaceful roads I traveled had become a part of me. And I felt a complete sense of peace as I drifted off to sleep to the sound of gentle waves and the presence of the magical energy of this incredible location.
Oh, good.